All right, hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about some massive wildfires in Europe. Europe. They're engulfing France and Spain. Around 300,000 people have been forced to evacuate due to these massive wildfires that have spread across France and Spain. It's unfortunate. There's a lot of lives being affected. There are homes being burned. A lot of rural areas have been burned. If you could see here, around 104,000 acres near Bordeaux in France, and we got 123,000 acres near Avila and near Madrid in Spain. So they're having a tough time over there. A lot of tough times. The reason these are so bad is there's been a lot of fuel from rains, then heat waves, drought, rain, heat wave, drought, rain, heat wave. That creates a lot of fuel, especially dead grass, strong winds, and vegetation that's dried out. So what happens is it creates the perfect fire triangle where it gets its fuel, it gets its oxygen, and then it gets its heat. Most people consider California and Australia to be like hot zones for this, but Europe also has it with the Mediterranean climate. Let's go ahead and check it out. This is Madrid over here, and you could tell it's more in the rural, mountainous area. There are towns being actively affected, though, by these. That's why there's 300,000 evacuees. But you could see it's a pretty serious situation. And then if we go out from Madrid in Spain to good old France, it's down here in this little left section, and you could see that the fires are near pretty close to the town. But it seems that it's it appears like farmland to me, rural areas. Yeah. So you got a lot of fires going on in Europe. The human cost, you could tell that there's a lot of neighborhoods that are being burned down with this, with only minutes to spare for the families. Businesses they know and love are going up in flames, burning to ashes. Thousands are currently sleeping in emergency shelters right now, actively as we speak. Climate change, a lot of people talk about climate change, the potential or reality of humans affecting the climate. The argument is that there are wildfires that have happened here naturally all the time in the past, but the question is, have warmer temperatures made them worse? Did it increase the amount of longer droughts? Did it increase the amount of drier conditions that can cause fires to spread more easily and become more harder to control? Right? That's the climate change argument. What I personally like to focus instead of the boogeyman of climate change is real factors. For example, land management, vegetation buildup, land use changes, and human-caused ignitions, potentially arson, campfires, etc. You don't know what exactly caused it. I don't think they know what exactly caused it right now. But Europe's crisis isn't just about the weather or climate change. It could be land management, since a lot of people are moving from rural areas to less rural areas, the urban city areas. Well, that means that there's less people to manage the land. There's less livestock to roam and manage the land, to eat up that grass that spreads fires easily, to eat up some shrubs that help push the shrubs fires to the trees, right? So that's one comment, farming, grazing livestock, cutting vegetation, and harvesting some of that wood would potentially ease these wildfires, because decades have changed with the rural landscape changing in those decades. The rural communities in this day and age have shrunk, increasing the amount of combustible material, because the less people there are, the more it piles up and adds on. Lastly, how can we actually make a change here? Well, Europe needs to really think about fire prevention more than they do firefighting. You could have firefighting. We could keep that the way it is because it's very important. There's thousands of firefighters. There's military personnel. Other countries are trying to help extinguish these flames. But how can we actually make it so that these don't happen in the first place? The idea is to go and manage that land a little better. Avoid planting flammable trees. Eucalyptus and pine are well known for being very flammable. Grass needs more grazing. If you see a really dry summer and if you see a really wet winter, then that means that in that summer, all that huge amount of shrubbery is going to get dried out and it's going to cause perfect ignition. Shrubs act like ladders, allowing the flames to climb upward to the trees. And once they get to the crown of the trees, they could jump fairly easily. And on top of that, it's a lot harder to control a fire 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 feet in the sky compared to something that's ground level, right? So during the wet years, they need to focus on the danger that the grass, shrubs, and foliage, the increased amount of it comes in, because once the heat kicks in, it's going to dry all that stuff. This pattern is very well noticed in California, causing some of their massive wildfires, right? We just had the Palisades and the Altadena fires, and before that was the giant one in the mountains near Simi Valley that caused horrible air quality for the entire area. So goal number 1, to avoid large wildfires, because the large wildfires, they're harder to control. They create more wind, they create more heat, they create more embers, they create their own weather sometimes. They also create a giant overwhelming fatigue on firefighters because they're so tired from dealing with that blaze. So the number 1 goal is to avoid large wildfires by kicking it where it hurts, getting rid of that foliage, getting rid of combustible or flammable trees. Of course, if they're natural to that area, you need to keep them. But that's the main ways that we could realistically work on managing this situation. But yeah, hopefully these fires can go out quicker than later. Hopefully all the efforts that they're putting into them can change. If you want to see some of them, you could see it from a couple Twitter pages, but they're pretty devastating. You could see a lot of flames, a lot of smoke. I believe in this video you could also see a man with his horses that are essentially freaking out, right? They don't know what's happening. They could barely breathe. Like we talked about earlier, businesses are burning down, people's homes are burning down, people are getting evacuated to safe areas, but this is some pretty rough situations going on here. And then here's a additional video. Apparently there are wildfires all over the place, but Spain and France are the ones we're focusing on today. Here's some additional footage. Some of it is the same footage, but you could see, I don't know if all of these videos are exactly from France or Spain. I just searched up Europe wildfire in Twitter, but it seems that some of them are definitely from Europe. Yeah. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you could always discuss it in the comments. Like the video, share the video, tell your friends, or I'll tell them for you. But I bid you adieu. Goodbye.